Welcome back to Robots versus Vampires. I'm Adrian Smith, and you know me. I'm your host for this crazy journey where we explore these awesome clashes between, well, robots and vampires.
And I'm Julia Jones. I'm ready to dive in, into the tech and the magic and all that stuff that makes these stories so interesting.
Yeah. So today we're taking you guys on a deep dive into this story called Cure of the Cursed. So imagine a world where vampires are real, and there's this rumor of a cure, a way to reverse that whole immortality thing.
And what's really cool is how the story presents this cure. It's not like some simple potion or a spell or something. It's described as this shimmering pool with this ancient energy. So right away, it's blurring the lines between what we might consider science and magic. Is this pool lost technology? Is it some supernatural thing? Or maybe it's both.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that we're going to explore today. But first, let's get to know our protagonist.
Yeah.
So we got Lyra. She's a vampire, and she wants desperately to break free from this curse. So she finds these ancient documents. They're called the Sanguine Scrolls, and they're basically like a map to this mysterious cure.
It's like a treasure map.
Yeah.
But instead of gold, it leads to her potentially becoming human again.
Exactly.
The Sanguine Scrolls themselves are pretty interesting. They read almost like a scientific blueprint, like some lost piece of technology, but at the same time, they're steeped in ancient lore and mythology. So it makes you wonder if the story is hinting at some advanced civilization from way back in the past, maybe one that understood stuff that we're only just starting to figure out now.
That's a great point. Cure of the Curse definitely plays with that idea of forgotten knowledge.
Yeah.
Which, we see in stories where fantasy and sci-fi kind of collide. But things get even more interesting when Lyra is forced to team up with this vampire hunter.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about an unlikely alliance.
That's crazy. You'd think that they would totally hate each other.
Right.
But the hunter, he has his own reasons, and he agrees to help Lyra find this cure. And then they're joined by this hedge witch named Briar, who brings her own kind of magic to the team.
So now we have a vampire, a hunter, and a witch all working together.
Right.
It really messes with that whole good versus evil thing.
Totally.
Who are the real monsters in this situation?
Yeah.
Is it the vampires, or is there something more going on?
Yeah, that's a question that keeps coming up as you read the story.
I do.
And it's something that I think we as readers, or in this case, listeners, really need to think about. Are our own ideas about vampires and hunters getting in the way of seeing what's really happening? Is it possible to understand even those we think of as enemies?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where Cure the Curse really, I think, does a great job. It forces us to look at our own biases and consider this world where good and evil aren't so simple. But as this unlikely trio gets closer to what they're searching for, they run into a big problem. They're ambushed by this group of vampire hunters who say that Briar and the hunter are traitors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is like a turning point in the story.
Yeah.
It not only makes things more intense, but it also makes you question why those who say they're fighting for good are really doing it. Are these hunters actually good? Or are they motivated by something worse, something that makes them unable to see that people can change and get second chances?
Yeah, makes you wonder.
It does.
Yeah.
Right? The story doesn't give us easy answers.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why it's so interesting. It challenges us to think about what the characters do and why they do it, and to question our own ideas about who the good guys really are.
And right in the middle of this ambush, with everything at stake, Lyra does something that really surprises us. Instead of running away or trying to save herself, she decides to fight not just for herself, but for the hunter and the witch.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where we see Lyra kind of change. She's not just some desperate vampire looking for a cure anymore. There's something more to her now, a sense of loyalty and selflessness that makes us rethink what we thought a vampire should be.
Her decision really shows how being connected to others and sharing experiences can change you, even though they're different. Lyra, the hunter, and Briar have formed this bond that's more important than their own goals and prejudices. They've learned to depend on each other, to see each other as people, and in the end, to fight for each other.
And this sets us up for an epic battle, a clash of ideas and loyalties that will determine what happens to our unlikely heroes and their search for the cure. But you'll have to wait till the next part to find out what happens next. Stay tuned.
Wow, that cliffhanger really leaves us with a lot to think about. We have this unlikely team facing off against these vampire hunters. And right when things are at their worst, Lyra decides to fight, not just for herself, but for her friends. What do you think that tells us about her character, Adrian?
Yeah, it's a really powerful moment that makes us question what we think we know about vampires.
Right.
We usually think of them as being loners, just focused on surviving. But here's Lyra risking it all for the very people who are supposed to be her enemies.
Exactly. It's like even creatures surrounded by darkness. and driven by these basic urges, can still be compassionate and make sacrifices. It blurs the lines between what we think is monstrous and what we see as heroic. It forces us to reevaluate how we judge things.
And don't forget, this is all happening while they're trying to find this cure that's wrapped in mystery and uncertainty. We still don't really know if this shimmering pool is some scientific marvel, a magical spring, or maybe something that's beyond our understanding.
Yeah, that's what makes Cure of the Curse so captivating. It keeps making us question what we think we know. Like, take the Sanguine Scrolls, for example. They're described as these ancient documents, but they act like some lost scientific blueprint, a guide to messing with the very essence of life. It's like the story is hinting at this fusion of ancient wisdom and advanced technology, something that comes up a lot in these robot versus vampire stories.
It's almost like the story is asking us, what if magic from the past is actually science that we haven't rediscovered yet? What if those ancient civilizations had knowledge and abilities that we've lost or just dismissed as myths?
That's a really interesting thought, and it makes you think about if this cure that Lyra and her companions are after is more than just a physical change. Maybe it's also a symbol of regaining lost knowledge, bridging the gap between what we call magic and what we understand as science.
That makes a lot of sense. And it connects back to what we were talking about before, with those blurred lines between good and evil. Maybe the real conflict in this story isn't really about vampires versus hunters, but about those who stick to rigid beliefs versus those who are willing to see the world in a more complex way.
It's like the story saying that the real monsters are the ones who refuse to change, to adapt, to see past their own limited ideas. It's a powerful message that goes beyond just the world of vampires and hunters.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about the choices we make in our own lives. Are we holding on to outdated beliefs? Do we judge others based on simple categories? Or are we open to challenging what we think we know and understanding how complicated the world really is?
Those are some heavy questions. But that's what good stories do, right? They make us think critically, to deal with difficult ideas, and to examine our own values and beliefs, and Cure of the Cursed definitely does all of that.
For sure. And as we go deeper into this story, we see these themes play out in even more fascinating ways. Remember that ambush we left off on? Well, the fight that follows is totally epic. It's this whirlwind of magic weapons and unexpected alliances that keeps you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, the action is intense. But what really stands out is how the characters' individual skills and personalities come into play. We see the hunter's tactical brilliance, Briar's natural use of magic, and Lyra's surprising agility and strength, all blending together to form this powerful force. It reminds us that even the most unlikely allies can work together and achieve amazing things when they combine their strengths.
They don't win easily, but in the end, they make it, clearing the path to the shimmering pool, to that potential cure that's been driving them. But as Briar and the hunters step forward, ready to jump in, they stop and turn to Lyra with this look. It's hard to explain. A mix of uncertainty, compassion, maybe even a little bit of guilt.
That moment is intense. It's like the weight of everything they've gone through, all the battles, the betrayals, the shifting loyalties. It all comes down to this one decision. They have to face a question that goes to the heart of their beliefs. What does it really mean to deserve a second chance? Do they offer that chance to Lyra, a vampire who should be their enemy?
And let's not forget, the story has kept us guessing about what this cure really is. Is it just a physical transformation? Is it some spiritual cleansing? Or is it something completely different? The fact that they hesitate suggests that they're struggling with the unknown consequences, not just for themselves, but for Lyra too.
It's like they're realizing that this cure, the shimmering pool, might be more than just a way to reverse vampirism. It could represent a huge change in how they see the world, a blurring of the lines between science and magic, between predator and prey.
Exactly. It's like they're coming to terms with the idea that this cure, this shimmering pool, could be way more than just a way to reverse vampirism.
Yeah.
It could be a totally new way of looking at the world. It could blur those lines between science and magic, predator and prey.
Yeah, and that's where Cure of the Cursed really excels. It goes beyond the usual monster hunting story and makes us face these uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about how we can be both compassionate and cruel, about the choices we make when we face something we don't understand.
It's a story that sticks with you, even after you finish reading it. It makes you ask yourself, what would I do if I were in that situation? Would I be willing to share a cure, to give a second chance to someone I was always told to fear and hate?
That's what makes great storytelling so great. It doesn't give us all the answers. It makes us think critically, to examine our own biases, and to see that the world is complex, a world where good and evil aren't always clear-cut.
The Cure of the Cursed really shakes things up. It takes these classic figures, the vampire, the hunter, the witch, and shows us their human side. their potential for both good and bad. It's like the story is telling us, don't judge a book by its cover or a vampire by its fangs.
Mm,
There's more to these creatures, more to ourselves than we might think.
right. And that's a powerful message, especially in a world that's becoming more and more divided. It reminds us that we all have the potential for darkness and light inside us. And it's the choices we make that decide which path we take.
So where does all this leave us? On the edge of this shimmering pool, with Lyra the Hunter and Briar facing a choice that could change their lives forever. We don't get to see what they decide in the story, but that's okay. The real impact comes from the questions it asks, the challenges it throws in our assumptions, and the feeling that there's always more to discover, more to learn about ourselves and the world we live in.
And that's why we love diving into these robot versus vampire stories. They're not just about big battles and fantastical creatures. They're about exploring what it means to be human, the gray areas of right and wrong, and the infinite possibilities that open up when we dare to question the way things are. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Cure the Cursed. We hope it's left you with just as many questions as answers, and a new appreciation for how stories can challenge us, inspire us, and maybe even change us. Man, that cliffhanger is intense. It's like you can feel the tension in that moment, right? You've got Briar and the Hunter standing there at the edge of the pool, this potential cure, and they just stop. What do you think is going through their heads?
I think it's like everything they've been through. All the fights, all the times they've been betrayed, all the changing sides. It all comes down to this one moment.
Mm.
And they have to face this question that really challenges what they believe. What does it mean to deserve a second chance? And should they give that chance to Lyra? I mean, she's a vampire. She's supposed to be their enemy.
And we can't forget, the story hasn't really told us what this cure is all about. Is it just a physical thing? Is it some kind of spiritual purification? Or is it something we can't even imagine? The fact that they hesitate makes you think they're worried about what might happen. Not just to them, but to Lyra, too.
Right. It's like they're realizing that this cure, this pool, it could be more than just a way to stop being a vampire. It could be like a total shift in how they see the world.
Yeah.
Like blurring the lines between science and magic, between predator and prey.
And that's what makes Cure of the Cursed so great. It goes beyond the usual monster story and makes us think about some hard truths about ourselves, like how we can be caring and cruel at the same time, and about the choices we make when we're facing the unknown.
It's a story that sticks with you,
Mm-hmm.
even after you're done reading it. It makes you wonder, what would I do if I were them? Would I share the cure? Would I give a second chance to someone I was always taught to fear and hate?
That's the power of good storytelling, right? It doesn't give us all the answers. It pushes us to think for ourselves, to question our biases, and to see that the world isn't black and white. Good and evil aren't always so clear.
Cure of the Cursed really turns things upside down. It takes these classic figures, the vampire, the hunter, the witch, and it shows us their human side. How they can be both good and bad. It's like the story saying, hey, don't judge a book by its cover or a vampire by its fangs. There's more to these creatures, more to all of us than we realize.
Yeah, and that's a powerful message in a world that feels so divided. It reminds us that we all have the potential for both darkness and light, and ultimately our choices decide which path we take.
So where does this leave us? At the edge of this mysterious pool, with Lyra, the hunter, and Briar facing a choice that could change their lives. We don't actually see what they decide in the story, but that's okay. The real power of the story is in the questions it asks, the way it challenges what we think we know, and the feeling that there's always more to discover about ourselves and the world around us.
And that's why we love exploring these robot versus vampire stories. They're not just about cool fights and mythical beings. They're about what it means to be human, about those gray areas of morality, and about all the possibilities that come up when we dare to question the way things are. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Cure of the Cursed. We hope it's left you with as many questions as answers, and a newfound appreciation for how stories can make us think, inspire us, and maybe even change us for the better.